There we go. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm here with Amanda, who recently got in, maybe not recently, who got into ideal parent figure protocol and recently ran a workshop about it. And we're here to talk about that and then talk about maybe other stuff. Hi, Amanda.
Hey,
You wanna tell our listeners something about ideal parent figure protocol and the workshop?
oh man. Yes, I do. Um,
Nice. I can also ask more specific questions.
yeah, no, um, I like, it's just the shit, man. Like,
It's really good.
it's really good. I like, yeah, I like, just like the first thing that comes up is I'm just like, oh, I just feel like everyone should try this. Like, um, an incredibly powerful modality that like unfortunately due to like a bunch of like random world things stayed very niche or like
Mm,
I guess it's like getting more traction now but like um yeah it like I mean it was only invented like 5 years ago
mm,
and like sort of hasn't had its moment yet. Like I feel
mm,
like IFS is like having its moment which is like amazing and like a lot of that is because it got accepted into sort of like clinical, like it was like officially uh, a modality that was like clinically recognized.
mm.
And IPF is just like so powerful and just like not yet at the point where it has like entered the system. Um, and yeah, I just think it's like I'm like everyone should try it. Like yeah.
I remember my very first experience. I signed up for this ideal parent figure online course taught by Cedric Reeves.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's still there's like some kind of there was some kind of weird legal trouble with that later.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
unfortunately, but at the time he was still teaching these courses. And I remember like the very first like time I tried to do it, like he put on a guided meditation. He was like, go to a safe space and then like imagine your ideal parent. Like, just like notice how like there was some stuff in the guided meditation I wasn't huge fan. I was like, notice how safe and comfortable you feel. I'm like, I don't though. Come on, man. Like, what if you feel safe and comfortable?
Yeah.
But I remember really being struck by like when I really tried to do it, I got so angry. I just got so angry.
Yeah.
There was like at this like, oh, I'm gonna imagine an ideal mother and who is like supposed to love me or something. And then I was just like, how dare you?
Yeah.
How dare you try to love me? It was just really, it was like extremely intense. But I like it's definitely like it's powerful stuff. Like it's not this is not like it's really getting at something.
Yeah. Like rifling through my like million thoughts that came up as you were saying that. Yeah, I mean, I think this is like so the like the incredible thing about like IPF and I think about like many of these modalities that do this is like yeah, you're gonna have stuff like anger or grief or like whatever it is come up and
Mm.
then that just gets like folded in. Like it's part of it. Um it's not like oh that's a problem like you feel anger at
Yeah,
your mom.
yeah,
Yep, that's the point. The point is
yeah,
that
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
you feel anger and so like now like let your ideal parents be with you in that anger.
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
what does your anger most need? Um and then you're like, oh, like maybe like space to express it. And they're like, cool, they can provide you the space to express it. And then you're like, oh, maybe I need to punch something. And they're like,
Yeah,
cool, they can like, let you punch something. It's like it's sort of this like delightful like unfolding of like literally like I have this like image in my head of like this sort of like recursive unfolding where it's like everything that comes up can be folded back into like
mm,
that's exactly what needs to be there and like your ideal parents can soothe that.
mm.
Um yeah,
So
yeah.
maybe we should say something about what exactly the practice is.
Yeah, totally.
That might be a good time. It, it's occurring
Yeah.
to me. For those of our listeners who are not familiar, how would you describe it?
Yeah. So I guess like not to go too far back, but like the frame that I have is like we form like when we're really young, we learn how to interact with the world
Mm,
through our caregivers. We learn like who we are, what our self-worth is, like what we can expect, and we learn how to survive. Like whatever, like our caregivers are our like only interface with the world, like main interface with the world. And we're really, really, really good at surviving. And so we'll do whatever it takes. Like if we're gonna get like rejected when we show emotion, we'll learn to stop showing emotion. If we like need to cry and scream to get attention, we'll do that.
mm,
Um, so we form like these like working models of ourselves in the world when we're super duper young, like pre-verbal level young. And then that's reality. Like that's so we just like move through the rest of life with that as our reality.
mm,
And then because the brain is really freaking cool, um, like that's not like it's not actually fixed. Like we can actually go back and like revise those early working models by like imagining alternative outcomes.
mm,
Um, and so like if people are familiar with like the memory reconsolidation process, which is basically like you like reactivate an old memory and then provide juxtaposing contradictory evidence and you put them like right beside each other until like the original memory overwrites. Like the way that ideal parent figure does that is by having you imagine that your needs actually were met and that your needs like can actually be completely met by like imaginary parents. So you like basically like the process is just like anything that comes up. It's like, okay, like imagining ideal parents who are not your actual parents. They can be anything, like they can be like cartoons or like whatever, but they can
mm,
like ideally not someone that actually is like exists in your life. Um, and they're like perfectly, there's a bunch of characteristics they have. So like they're like attuned to you, they delight in your being, they're like able to keep you safe. They like um yeah, love spending time with you, like all this stuff. They're like, they know exactly how to soothe you. And at every step, you're like, you feel like one of those early like attachment needs coming up, and you're like, okay, imagine these ideal parents came in and they know exactly what you need and they're able to give it to you. And if you do that over and over and over, you actually just like rewire those early beliefs and you start to expect that you're going to get your needs met and you expect that things are going to go well and feel good. And then you're like,
mm.
become securely attached. Like,
Boom.
ta-da. Yeah, yeah,
You're that-
exactly. But kind of actually though, like it is just that. It's like you do that process over and over for like a year, 2 years, and then like boom chow, you're secure. Like
So
yeah,
so you've been doing this with a facilitator, with a therapist?
yeah.
How did you find one? Because I would
Okay,
imagine
well,
that it's super easy. Yeah.
yeah. So you told me about IPF like
Yeah. Yeah.
first. You're having
Wow.
a poll and you were like, this shit's wild. This is like the most impactful thing I've done. And I'm like, that's
Yeah.
cool.
And then I
Um,
started let's
so so then I went and found the like foundational protocol meditations online and just did those. And I found them like super, like I just like felt feelings in my body that I hadn't felt before in terms of like relief and like
mm,
feeling being loved and then I couldn't I like it just stopped there and I just like went about my life for 6 months and then I ran into one of my friends and I was telling him like oh I like tried this protocol and he was like oh I worked with an IPF facilitator
um,
uh who was really good you should work with him
mm,
um and then I've been working with him and then have referred him to like all of my friends.
mm,
Um, but it totally was this experience of like, I happened to say, like, you happened to say to me this thing, and then I happened to say to someone else this thing, and then he happened to have worked with a facilitator that he
mm,
connected me
mm.
to that I happened to vibe with. It was just
Nice.
like,
That's great.
like great and also like womp womp, like so like random and like haphazard.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, it's often like that. Like I first learned about IFS from just like a friend of mine who like this was way before people talked about it a lot on Twitter. This
yeah.
was like just like
You're like an OG.
yeah, just like a friend of mine who was like, hey, there's this thing called I called internal family systems, and you like talk to your parts, and here's like a book about it. And I was like, huh, okay, that's I heard that this was back in probably 2015 or something. Like
Oh, damn.
Before
Okay.
I'd even started doing any emotional work at all. But like there were people who were already like, hey, there's this thing called, you ever heard of parts work? There's this thing called parts. I was like, well, yeah, that makes sense, I guess.
Yeah.
I couldn't never actually do it. I still am not very good at actually doing,
Mm.
but it's
Ooh.
like a, for me, I don't know. For me, I got part stuff is more like a framework that I used to think through stuff. Uh,
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, here's a situation where like I have a part that's feeling one way and I have another part that's
Yeah.
feeling a wildly different way, and they're conflicting, and here we are. Um, but I,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know where I'm going with this. I just find that like uh, I have sort of maybe similar difficulties with parts work as with IPF actually, which is like I'll try to like talk to a part or something, and it'll just like scream, and it'll just like scream for maybe a long time, and I'll be like, I don't know if this is really helping. Like I don't know if this really constitutes a conversation that we're having exactly. Or I'll get parts that just like refuse
Yeah.
to say anything. They just like won't explain anything to me. And I'll be like, yeah, okay, I guess this is where we're at now. I guess we're
Yeah.
just gonna be here for a little while. Like, I don't know. There's just these like very strong extreme reactions, and I'm just like, I'm not really sure what to do with it. Which
Yeah. It's super interesting.
maybe
Sorry.
is part of the value of working with it. Like I
Yeah.
just this is just I'm just talking about myself now. Just for me personally, like I've tried to do a lot of stuff on my own for
Mm.
various reasons. Like I haven't really worked with a facilitator or a therapist on a lot of things. And I've made some progress, but also like there are definitely ways I get stuck on my own that probably a
Mm.
facilitator or therapist would be able to like help me get out of. There's like places where I just kind of like lose hope, and I'm just like, well, I don't know what to do about this. That might be good for having someone else. So yeah, so with IPS specifically, like I think Cedric offered to do one-on-one work. He's like, yeah, I'm available as like as a one-on-one facilitator. Uh, and I was like, no, thank you. I also didn't like the guided meditations very much because they kept making claim, like the thing I was saying, like they kept making claims about my emotional state, like, hey, you feel notice
Yeah.
how safe and comfortable you feel, but I don't. So I didn't want to do those either. So I just kind of like went off and was like, I'm gonna just figure out how to do this by myself, which like maybe worked a little bit, but like maybe not so well so much. I don't know if
Mm.
you have thoughts about any of this. I'm just kind of rambling at this point.
Yeah. No, I'm actually so interested in this. Like, especially the like when you were like, oh, um, like parts work, like I don't remember the exact phrase you said, but something along the lines of like I haven't like quite like um yeah, like being able to do like the thing that it is or something.
Mm,
Um, I actually like I've been thinking a lot about this, and I recently got into parts work or like IFS, and I had like kind of avoided it actually for a long time before that.
mm.
Um, and I was having this question of like, why is this not working for me? Like it really wasn't. Like I was like talking to parts and they would resist and like get
Yeah,
really
yeah.
angry or like just shut down or dissociate. And I was like, what's up? Like why does everyone else seem to have great success with this? And I'm just like in like this internal turmoil whenever I try and like connect with my
Yeah,
partner.
yeah.
And then I was reading Dick Schwartz's and it's called Internal Family Systems, like one of his books. And there were like two things that like stood out to me. One was that like and so I'm actually curious like if this resonates. Like the thing that gets parts to like calm down and like feel okay is the presence of self.
Mm,
And then like you can either give them that through the therapist self. Like if you're not in self, the therapist can be holding self. And they can where like self is like the IFS thing for like um you're just like it, tapping into the consciousness of the universe. I don't know how people would explain it. That's kind of how I feel. Like it's like you're fully grounded and just from a place of like, compassion and like just receiving and you can hold everything like that place.
mm,
So you can either get it from the therapist, which actually is I think what a lot of people do when they go in and they just don't know what self is and they've never been in it and they like can't experience haven't experienced it. They're just like patterning or like resonance from the therapist system, and that's giving them that stability.
Mhm.
Or you can bring the self yourself. Um, and then the sneaky part that I realized was that there's like these parts that like look like self,
Yeah.
but aren't actually self. And
Mm.
whenever I was like doing parts work and I was actually in like one of these parts that looked like myself, that part was like being violent. It was like causing havoc in the system, and the whole
Mm.
system was just like, "Ah," like no.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and so yeah, this was like last week that I was like playing with this and like, oh man, like actually you can really cause a lot of harm if you're not like either in self yourself or like you have a therapist holding that for you. And it's really easy to think that you are, or like, yeah, I'm curious like what comes up hearing that.
Yeah, that does feel relevant. Like I have felt like I've been approaching myself or
Mm.
approaching a part from a kind of like, I guess you could call it like a facilitator part, which is not
Yeah,
exactly self and
yeah.
is useful in some ways, but also like sometimes just feels like I think a thing that a vibe that I sometimes get from my parts when I do this is just like uh I don't know how to describe it, but a little bit like something like you just want to change me and like I don't want
Mm,
to change. So
yeah,
why
yeah,
would I talk to you? Like the only possible outcome of this conversation is that you try to make me change in some way, and I don't want that. So I'm not going to talk to you. Um,
yeah.
as opposed to a more kind of acceptance uh kind of energy. Like this is related to okay, so this is for me related to I've often had a lot of trouble with anything that feels like self-love or like meta. I had
Mm,
this kind of like long-standing arguments with people who are really into meta.
oh.
Uh,
Say more. What is it?
of just like I just find it very I have it's actually gotten a little bit easier recently, which is great, but it's historically been extremely difficult for me. Uh
What happens when you're trying to do meta?
just like oh this feels fake or
Mm,
wrong in some way, or like if I'm trying to cultivate self-love, I'm like, what even is that? Or like a lot of different things coming up. It's like, what even is that? Like, what does it even mean to love yourself? And also like, even if this were possible, I don't deserve it.
yeah, okay,
Kind
yeah.
of thing.
That'll do it. Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
like, how do I do it in a way that doesn't feel like fake or like cloying or like I don't know. There's a specific kind of like I guess I've had like a specific mental image of what self-love would look like that's like kind of like sticky sweet. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't know about that. I don't really
Interesting.
but like it's unclear whether any of these are kind of the real objection or whatever. But in any case, I've often had like a huge amount of internal resistance to doing
Yeah.
anything that looks like cultivating self-love. Uh and then yeah, so then I've just been like, well, I guess I can't do that and I have to do other stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I have been trying. I think I like made a little bit of progress on this recently. Um, I don't know how to describe it. Like I just sit down and try a bunch of stuff. Uh, there was actually something. I don't know. This is kind of a tangent, but it's I don't know. It's an interesting tangent. So Daniel Ingram, do you know
Yeah.
about Daniel? So he wrote this book, Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha,
Yeah.
about his take on insight meditation, and he wrote a second edition of that book that is freely available online.
Mm.
And I skimmed through it, and there's this really interesting bit uh, that I was really struck by called "Magic and the Brahma Viharas." And I don't know if I'm going to be able to explain adequately what he said, like
Sounds good.
the thing that I got out of this.
Yeah.
But so first of all, so first he talks about kind of magic in the Brahma. He's very like there's all the chapters on magic I find really interesting. They're really good. I think he's like very kind of realistic and pragmatic about what sort of a thing magic is, and like he talks about like consciousness and intention and all this stuff. And so he's like, in this chapter, he's like, okay, so suppose you believe that you can like, consciously intend things and that has some kind of effect on the world. Like suppose you believe in some sense that it's possible to like do magic in that sense. It's possible to just like, focus your intention on a particular thing, and like that thing somehow something happens as a result of you doing that, then what kind of magic should you do? Like what's sort of like the best kind of magic you should do?
Oh, cool.
And he goes through this sort of like long kind of logical arguments about like, okay, here are some features of like that distinguish better magic from worse magic. And he says several different things about that. One of them is like, it's better, like magic is better when it's benevolent. It's just like much better when it's benevolent. He's I don't he gives several reasons. I don't remember what they all are, but there are things like you can try to curse people. Like you can try to be like, I wish that that something bad happens to this person. And he's like, that's not a good idea. It's like actually a bad idea. It's like there's a reason that we have all these tropes and warnings in culture about black magic. It's just like actually bad. It's bad for other people. It's also bad for you. Like when you wish ill will on other people, it has a way of like rebounding onto you. And so it's just bad all around. He talks a lot about this. I thought it was super interesting. So he concludes like, okay, so if you want to have it go well, you should do magic that is benevolent. Um, and then he says a bunch of some other things along those lines. That's like also it's better if it's more general, like it's better if it's kind of like more broad, because then it's kind of easier. Like you could wish that good things happen to a specific person, but I don't actually remember what he says about this, but it's like he just says it's better that if you wish good things happen to some broader group, because it's just like simpler or something.
My
So he
like
goes, oh sorry.
my little skeptical brain is like, oh yeah, that makes sense because when you wish for a broader thing, it's higher likelihood that you actually get the thing. Whereas if
Yeah,
you wish for something very specific, like
yeah, it's just harder.
it's like lower probability that it randomly happens. Oh, sorry,
Yeah, he said
continue.
he said something more
Yeah,
specific than this that I just don't remember. I just don't
yeah.
remember. But the whole thing it's a very interesting read. But after this like long chain of arguments, he concludes that like actually the best form of magic is just practicing the Brahma Viharas, like practicing metta and practicing karuna and all this stuff, like compassion and loving kindness. He's like, that's just the best stuff. The best stuff you could wish for is to just like wish that things go well for other people. Um,
Yeah.
and I was like, you
Yeah.
know what? That's like pretty good. I'm actually pretty into this. Like this is actually the thing that changed my mind about metta as a practice. I was like, oh, okay, like that actually
Cool.
makes a lot of sense. It's like
Was it what part of that like switched you over? Like what was the thing that
I
like
don't even know how to explain it. It's just um like it flipped some kind of like very specific switch in my mind, and I don't even know how to describe what the nature of the switch is. But like um there's some kind of like so I okay, here's another thing that I just like a random thing that I read once that I don't remember where it comes from, but someone posted an excerpt from a book that said something like the the human body is a wish granting machine. It's just that it's
Hmm.
currently already working on a bunch of wishes that you made in the past, and some of those wishes contradict each other. And that's why it seems like
Whoa.
you're a lot less powerful than you really are.
Dude, that's amazing.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, that's
I
fucking
love
good,
that.
actually. Yeah, exactly. That's like
Wow.
just a really, really interesting. It's like it's sort of a way of describing perceptual control theory, but in like a really
Yeah,
cool way that makes
yeah.
a
Or
lot
like
of sense.
that sort of predictive processing stuff with like,
Yeah, yeah, but
yeah,
it's like it's there's something about it that's like really striking. And so that really like affected me. And there's something
yeah.
there about like if you kind of imagine that you're always wishing for things, like one way or another, you're kind of always wishing for things, and you're like, well, I might as well decide to wish on purpose for better things. And
Mm,
what are the best things to wish for? It's like, well, probably for good things to happen to people, like just wishing for people's
yeah,
well-being. That seems like the best thing to wish for. Everything else seems worse. Like if you're not wishing for that,
yeah,
you're wishing for something that's worse than that. So I'm like, I might as well try to like cultivate on purpose the ability to like
yeah,
wish for
yeah,
people's well-being. So that something about that like got to me when other stuff happened. I was like, oh yeah, that's like I'm into this. This is like fine. This is
yeah.
like it felt, I don't know, something like if I had tried to do it before, it would have felt more fake, and something about that switched to making it feel real, or like something about it
Mm.
connected with like some sense of a desire to do good in myself that existed already. Like, oh, like those are compatible. Like that's what this is. Like this is all kind of compatible. Um,
Yeah. The energetic that I heard, and I don't know how much this is true, was something like it felt like a switch from like individual or like meta for like self for like the goal of self to like for others or like part of like a broader like not just focused on yourself thing, or that was like the feeling that was coming out of that.
Yeah, that's part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but then also a kind of like, oh, and I'm also part of that. Like
Yeah.
I am also a person.
Oh, yeah. I love the oh, that just like really hits the thing of like we are really good wishing, I don't know what you said, wishing machines.
Yeah.
Um
Wish granting machines. Yeah.
wish granting machines. Yeah, I was like it reminds me like I was last week I was in Barcelona and
Mm.
there was like this one moment like right before I like flew out where I was like standing looking at the city and I was just like man like so much suffering in this city,
Mm.
like so many people, like millions of people out here that I can like see energetically suffering. And then I was like what if all of those people were enlightened, like what if they were all in this state of like free flowing energy, like flow, aliveness.
Mm.
Um, and like the thing that like clicked with what you just said was like it feels like there would be an energy field that like um it would just be insane. Like you would step into like anywhere close to like millions of people in that like fully energetically flow state, and your whole body would just like resonate in the same like it would just like realign your body, like you wouldn't even do anything, you just like stand there and your body would just be like and then you'd like be in like free flow. And there's a similar feeling with the like where like wishing in so many directions that our energy is all like confused and it's like
Mm.
blocked here and it's trying to go this way and it's trying to go this way. And like actually if you did align all of it, like we actually have no idea what would be possible. Like it just like when you think about like millions of people in enlightened states in a city together, you're like, I mean, could we make plants grow? Probably. Like, could we do weird telepathic things? Maybe. I don't like it's just like can we even imagine that? Like, no, because like, or like, there's so much of consciousness that it feels like we would be tapped into that it's like, I feel like we can't even conceive right now of like what that could open up or like what could be possible in that world. Um, yeah, it's the same energetic to the
There's
wishing
this
thing.
there's this uh so there's this thing you can do called fire casino, which is another thing
Fire
that
casino?
fire casino. It's like a meditative you like I don't know
Lol.
more in the details, but you stare at a candle flame for a really, really long time. And then you just like it
Cool.
has a lot of like really weird effects in the visual system if you just keep doing it.
Yeah.
There's other stuff involved. I'm not going to be able to describe how to do it, but so there's these people who are like really into it and they ran a retreat where they just like all got together and just did it together for
Cool.
weeks. And they say that after a couple of weeks of doing it together, they were able to do things like um, one person could trace like a shape in the air and another person could see that shape like lit up if because they were all in this like very, very specific state together. Like they could just like draw in the air and they could see it and it was visible to other people.
Oh, that's so
And it's
cool.
like super interesting. It's super interesting to me. And I'm like, ah,
Magic, man.
like, you know, then you think about like what that made me think about this to tie it to your story is like um you hear old-timey stories about like saints performing miracles and things like that, but this is like very well tested in the religious literature. Like I mean, I'm not that I'm an expert, but like there are just a lot of stories about like saints performing miracles and things like
Yeah.
that. Like people attribute all kinds of crazy powers
Yeah.
to these guys. And like it's interesting to ask how much of that is plausible. Like, I don't know,
Yeah.
can people walk on water? I don't know. Can people like turn water into wine? I don't know. Like
Yeah.
what I think my for me, like the lower bound on what is possible is I think it's possible for people to like enter into states of like shared perception
Hmm.
where kind of like they're all kind of like jointly in sort of the same perceptual reality. And then I think it's possible for people to kind of like from there enter like a sort of shared dream state. where
Mm,
like I mean, the sort of deflationary way to say this is that I think it's possible for people to experience like very strong like group hallucinations, but I think that's like I don't like that language for describing it because it implies that the thing is not real.
yeah.
And I'm not prepared to call it not real. Like I don't think that the things that happen in dreams are not real, for example.
Mm,
And like I think when you're in this kind of like blurred space where like the dream world is kind of like leaked into the waking world a little bit and in a collective way, like I think the things that happen in that space are not necessarily not real. Like it's
mm,
this is like a whole thing, but like I that this is the kind of like when I'm trying to understand like okay, what kinds of these crazy powers and miracles are actually like plausible to me.
yeah.
This
I
is
think
these
I like,
yeah.
yeah, no, I think I agree with you around like, they're definitely not real. They're like not real in some sense. Like they're not like tracking, they're not like predictively real or something. Like dream, like it's like when you dream something, it's not, I guess it's not predicting things in the real world. Like that person that you dream doing a thing doesn't have a memory of doing that thing. But they're clearly real in the sense that like it's something happening to you or it's like something in your experience.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I think I totally um like this and like the magic frame and like I just think there's so much that we don't understand that's incredibly cool. Like as you were talking, I was thinking about like I got into Reiki a few months ago. Um and like yo, I don't know what's up with that, but like
Mhm.
it fully like when I do the like you know there's like the little symbols that you do to like call the power into your body, my whole body just like feels it. Like it starts like open energy starts flowing through. It's like a lot of like joy and like um I guess I haven't had that much experience like actually healing people with it. But like there's definitely something happening
Mhm.
when I'm doing that. Um and like general energetic stuff where like can just like feel what someone's doing with the energy. Like the more you attune to it, the more you're like, oh, like I can you're doing something and I can tell. And like maybe that's like micro visual signals. But like also maybe we just like don't understand stuff and it's really cool. Like one
Yeah.
day we will. And we'll be like what fools we were for thinking that we were like independent little beings with a clear, edge around us that like didn't affect everything else that was happening around us.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have I suggested that you read Pre-conquest Consciousness yet? That seems like something I probably
No.
that isn't okay. Well, so there's this thing called Pre-conquest Consciousness I'm really into,
Yeah.
and I'll probably send you
Pre-funk.
Pre-conquest Consciousness. So it's
I'm
this
really mishearing your words in like fascinating
Pre-conquest
directions.
Conscious.
Pre-conquest. Cool, got it.
I'm probably talking in a weird way, but it's this anthropologist talking like he like embedded himself in this like indigenous tribe and he just like describes extensively like sort of their whole way
Oh,
of life,
yeah.
and then he describes that way of life collapsing on
Uh,
contact with a different it's super interesting, um but he says a lot of stuff about like the way that they like there's this little parable in there
mm.
about how like uh, when the young boys of the tribe go hunting together, they're like kind of moving as like one cohesive like one one of the boys will like knock an arrow and another one will be like, oh, that guy needs this branch to be out of the way to make the shot, and he'll just like instinctively without any explicit communication move the branch out of the way so the first boy can have the perfect shot, and then the third boy will like do some other thing that's like, oh, he needs like this other thing to like help him with it, so they'll just like move together without like just kind of coordinating with vibes, like moving together.
Wow.
Uh, and there's a lot of other stuff. This is like just one little
Yeah.
thing out of like a huge, super interesting. Um, he also talks about like the collapse of this thing. He's like, this thing requires like this huge amount of of rapport. I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm just
Mm.
getting ramble. Uh,
Are we ever going anywhere?
yeah, so it goes like so he says, for example, there's a specific kind of way you need to raise children to maintain this whole thing and make it possible. And it involves like this was one of the first things I was really struck by. He says that the babies are just always in skin to skin contact, always, all the time.
Yeah.
They're literally
Yeah.
never not in skin to skin contact.
Yeah.
And either with the mother or with just one of the other, young women in the tribe or whatever. And this is relevant to how I do IPL. It's all connected.
Yeah.
Um, and then he says like as a result of if you raise children in this way, like it's it's like probably infeasible to do this in the modern world, sadly. But like if you raise children this way, he says that the first way they learn how to communicate is through touch.
Mm.
Like the first language they learn is this extremely sophisticated tactile language. Like they learn how to communicate their needs through touch because you have this like very detailed skin to skin contact thing. You can just like and you like learn
Just
like
like that.
a touch language for communicating like, hey, I need to eat, or like I need to pee or whatever. And he says that like children in the tribe, like he never heard them scream or cry. It was just never necessary because their
Mm.
needs were just being met so quickly. And I thought like it's really wild. It's like really interesting to read about this.
I'm like feeling that. Like my whole body is just like, oh, like just like that would have been really nice.
Yeah, right. Pretty good.
I want that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, like just yeah, like imagining the feeling of just having someone or people that attuned to you. Like I feel like often the thing that we are missing so much is attunement. Like most people spend very little time being attuned to. And like people are like listening to them, but they're not really listening, or like talking to them, but not like it's not actually like, oh, I'm like really feeling you and like feeling like where you are and where your energy is and like, hi, I'm just here, like attuning to you. And that is so nourishing. And it's even that is like verbal or like it's like presence, but it's like the thought of having like being a young child and having that level of attunement, but so close that it's just like, ooh, or like you start to tense and then you're being soothed. Or
Yeah,
like
exactly.
like
Mhm.
you like have a fear come up and then it's like, oh, but I'm safe. Like, oh,
Yeah.
damn. Wow.
Yeah, there's another, I think this is still from this section. Like he says something like he showed them a photograph of someone who was slightly angry and they were like extremely strongly. They were like, oh my God. It was like really, really shocking to them. They just like couldn't handle it. It was because they just weren't used, like no one ever got to that level.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And
It
they were able to feel
yeah.
it through a photograph. They were like, wow, that's like crazy. That dude's in a huge amount of distress that would be like unknown. It's wild. It's a
It
bunch of stuff
feels
like
like
that.
yeah, it feels so natural to think about that actually. Or like
Yeah.
I've been like exploring more recently the like my intuitive body and like how it wants to be versus my like verbal like sense mode or something.
Mm.
And like they feel like just like I'm increasingly aware of this just like giant gap between
Mm.
like the level of complexity and nuance and like subtlety of my like intuitive body that's like really like has a lot of wisdom and knows exactly how it wants to like be in the world. And
Mm.
then I like try and turn it into words to like orient in the society we live in, which like doesn't really accept complexity and like is more linear and like wants you to be linear and make sense.
Mm.
Um and it's such a sad like grief-filled reduction or
Mm.
it's like the like it's like going from like this to like this.
Mm.
Um and then I just like feel actually I'm taking this course called the Luminous Awareness Program, and they talk about this as like three stages of mind where they're like there's ordinary mind, and I'm not gonna do a great job explaining this because I only just started it. But like ordinary mind, which is like from your head, and it's like this thinking like constricted. You feel like when you're in it, you actually just feel really distant from people. And
Mm,
we're like mostly in it most of the time.
mm.
Then there's subtle mind, which is not going to try to explain it. I'm not actually quite sure. And then there's like awake awareness, which is like the full intuitive body. Like, and I was like on a like group meditation, and we were like in awake awareness, and we were all just sitting there being like nothing. Like we had a task we were ostensibly meant to be doing, but we were all just like, we don't need to do anything. Like nothing needs to happen. Like so we just like sat there doing nothing.
Mm.
Uh and yeah, it just feels like such a, and then we play with like moving back and forth between these minds. And it feels like taking this like beautiful unfolding and like scrunching it into like a shoe, or like being like to like go back to the ordinary mind, or like the, and like that's what the energy that I'm feeling as you're saying that is like the pre-conquest consciousness feels like that fully
Yeah.
intuitive,
Mhm,
nonverbal
mhm. Yeah.
like connection and awareness. And then as soon as you bring in the linear, like non-complex mode, it like, okay, so I'm actually interested in this. Like somehow it wins, but I'm not sure why. Like, why
So,
is it that that overtakes the other one instead of this way?
so the thing he described, he actually goes into, he describes in detail the collapse
Yeah.
of pre-conquest consciousness.
Mm.
It's crazy. I
Yeah.
won't be able to do it justice. I'm just going to send it to you, and you can just read
Yeah.
the way he describes it.
Yeah.
But one of the things he says, let me see if I can remember. Um, One of the things he says, I think, is that the pre-conquest consciousness thing requires like an extremely high level of rapport and like just positive feeling. And
Mm.
it's just like it's vulnerable to
Oh,
being collapsed by
yeah.
just like too much negative emotion or something like that.
Wait, that's so interesting. That totally makes sense.
Yeah, that's one of the
Yeah.
things. And then he said a different thing. There's this really striking sentence I don't feel like I understand when he describes the way that the babies grow up, which is something like
Mhm.
he says that their libidos are not anchored to abstract concepts, which is
Okay. All right. Say
abstract.
more.
Like, so for example, they have this very fluid attitude to what places are named. Like, places have multiple names. Names are extremely contextual. Names are kind of just like made up on the spot, on the basis of like,
Mm.
oh, this is like the spot where we did that, where that one cool thing happened, or this is the spot where we saw that one wild pig or whatever. Things don't have like fixed fixed objective names. Names are just kind of this fluid thing. That extends to names, but people have multiple names. Names are fluid and contextual. People just kind of make up names on the fly. Um, versus like
Mm.
he describes conquest consciousness as involving, for example, you need to like in conquest consciousness, there's this notion of like property rights. Like some people own some things and some other people own other things. And if you want to like use a river, but it belongs to someone else, you have to like
Mhm.
argue in some legal way that like you should have a right to use that river sometimes for some reason. Like you have to like your notion like the things that you want to do are have to be sublimated to this like abstract concept of ownership,
Mhm.
which I think is an example of the thing that he means when he says like libido is being anchored to abstract concepts. Like there's this abstract
Yeah.
concept of ownership, and once you are anchored to ownership as a concept, you are like restricted in the things that there's like a bunch of stuff you can't do. Like
Mhm.
I walk out on the street and there's like cars, and I'm like, I would love to jump on those cars. That sounds like a really fun thing. I can't do that because those cars don't belong to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, even if they did, I wouldn't
Oh,
want to
you
jump on
that
them.
like
But it's like sad. It's like I often feel this way when I'm like outside walking around. It's like I can't interact with most of the environments. Like most of the environment is just not available for me to interact with. Um, and that's like a little sad. And even when there's like, there's trees and bushes and stuff, I'm like, I can't eat that. Like, I can't put that in my mouth. Or I mean I could, but it wouldn't be very good. It's like the world is just like not, there's just like so many ways in which like you can't interact. You can't like really like
yeah.
interact with the world. And we've like constructed the world this way.
Yeah.
Um,
Which means also that you have to be like, you have to have your mind on, because like actually I felt this a lot with um like my ADHD, or like the way my ADHD mode like wants me to be is just incredibly like oh, car, we jump on car, or like it's
Yeah.
like very like and then when I have to follow the rules or like model people or like I have to do a lot of like checking that like what I intuitively want to do like actually fits. And then I
Yeah.
have to like pop up to mind and like do a bunch of modeling and be like, okay, but wait, like did I did I have any obligations that I like needed to remember? Did I like
Yeah.
are there any rules here that I'm gonna transgress? And then I like pop back down and it's like kind
Yeah.
of exhausting like doing
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
like switch all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. It also makes me think like so it's unclear that we want to go back to pre-conquest consciousness, right? Or like, or that we even could. Like, we have too much data, too much. Like, the thing that resonated as you were saying is like, you need really high trust. And like, as soon as you have too many people to develop actual trust, then you need like rules or you need like structure.
Mhm.
Um, but like, what is the like pre-conquest, conquest, like, what is this?
Like the
What is the
synthesis. Yeah.
yeah, the like taking into account of the fact that we actually like aren't living in like 50-person tribes and like probably don't want to be question mark or like we have all this um like this larger scale of
Mm.
stuff.
Yeah.
But we just want to be in that like intuitive state
Yeah,
like
I mean, I think that's a very big and important question in some sense. I think
yeah
like a lot of people
yeah
are asking that question in some sense. It's like,
yeah
oh yeah, how do we do the how that how do we get a thing that's better?
right like
Yeah.
what's the next like I mean, like, really finding a lot of value in like the developmental stages framework of like, oh, like humanity has like these, like moves through these developmental stages, and we're like collectively getting to the point where we're like going into the next stage, which is cool. Like, yeah. Mm.
It's a lot. It's a lot to think about. Get overwhelmed.
What do you mean? What about like how do
Just
you solve the like,
oh,
yeah.
there's just something like I don't like. I feel like there's something like I remember being more excited about this stuff in the past when I just had like more
Mm,
energy to do things.
yeah.
Being like, oh yeah, we're gonna do it. We're gonna figure out how to change the and like I do think there's something here, and also something about thinking about it now is like just kind of tiring. I'm like, I don't have the
Mm,
energy for this anymore.
yeah.
I've
Is
set
it
my
like,
sights lower or something.
yeah, I wonder like the thing that comes to mind is like I felt that often when there's like a powerlessness or like a feeling of like, well, can't actually do anything about that, or like it is too big.
Mm.
I'm curious if that like resonates.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think for me, I'm just like currently in a phase of dealing with just very
Mm.
straightforward, concrete issues. Like, can I
Yeah.
sleep at a reasonable time? Can
Yeah.
uh can I like eat a reasonable diet that like doesn't completely destroy my ability to concentrate on anything? And there's something very humbling about
Mm,
having to deal with that stuff. And it's like I can I can like I can like theorize and like think about all kinds of really interesting stuff. I can do that sort of forever. Like I'm very good at that. And it's just humbling to notice how the extent to which that does or doesn't affect my ability to just like make better choices on like a
mm,
like this very like concrete way. I'm like, well, yes, I can like I have this there's this dream that I have like this dream of like here's like a better way that things could be. And then there's just like the way that my life actually is. And then there's like how like what can I actually do on any given day to like inch closer to at least
mm,
something like
mm,
functional, uh, something that like allows me to maybe get back to dreaming.
mm. Yeah, that
And
makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. No, I think I like Yeah, I really get that. I was like, I was talking to my therapist today. I was like, I feel like I have a full-time job in emotional work for myself. Like, and that is my job. Like the amount, like the hours every day that I spend like working through the backlog of stuff, or like new stuff is coming in constantly, and then I'm like processing it as fast as I can, and then like I'm slowly getting through the backlog because like I'm moving slightly faster than the input rate.
Yeah.
But it is just like, yeah, it takes a lot actually to be to like move into just like individually being alive. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. What does it feel like for you when you like um are in the good state with yourself, or like when you're like when you move into like I have habits and like I'm sleeping, like what does your experience feel like?
Yeah, so I've been reflecting on this a bit of just like how do I know when I feel good? What is feeling? And
Yeah.
it's kind of simpler than I thought it was. It's kind of just like the really simple version of just is just that I can breathe easily. That's really like
Whoa.
just super simple. Just like, can I breathe easily right now? Accounts for maybe like 60% of my mood, or is like
Wow.
correlated with 60% of or something. It's like a very
Yeah.
it's not that complicated. Like uh, times when I'm like anxious about things and kind of panicky or kind of like triggered a little, like my breathing gets worse. I'm like, yeah, okay. And then times when I'm not like that, when I'm like not anxious and not panicky and also not having a react like a food reaction, are times when my breathing is more relaxed. And
Yeah.
just like, yep, that all makes a lot of sense. So I've been like sort of this very reluctantly like coming to actually pay attention to the breath a little bit. But this is something I've been avoiding for a long time.
Yeah.
Um, but now I'm like, I guess there's something good going on here. There's like something there's something like uh I'm still not a big fan of like sort of the traditional the breath meditations that I've come across, the ones that are just like, I'll just notice the breath on the tip of the nose or whatever. But I have been paying attention. I've been trying something like, uh, how could I breathe right now that would feel good?
Whoa.
Just like something, just like a very straightforward, like, yeah, there's like different ways I could breathe, and some of them feel better than others. And like, there's like I can sort of play around with the breath, and that's
I'm
been
like
like,
trying that right now.
yeah,
Did I breathe? I feel like there's like a theme of like things that you are like avoiding that you like sort of end up coming back to. You're like,
yeah, yeah,
oh, okay. Like,
yeah.
yeah,
It's that time. It's that time.
yeah, that's really nice. I guess the thing coming up is like, do you know what breathing easy feels like?
Yeah, like sometimes it happens as like sometimes I'll cry and then it'll be really easy to breathe
Uh,
temporarily, or like
yeah,
sometimes I'll take psychedelics and have some kind of big cathartic thing and then it'll be really easy. So like I've sort of
yeah,
experienced times when suddenly my breathing gets a lot frees up a lot, and then I'm like, oh, this is what the breath is supposed to be like.
nice. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I at least have these like little flashes of experience that I can refer to. I'm like, yes, that's how easy breathing could be.
What do you do? Like, what do you do when you're like, I am not breathing easily right now? Like, I guess you're like, how can I breathe more easily? But like,
Mostly I like sometimes nothing, and then sometimes I just like crawl into bed and just kind of wait.
yeah. Oh,
Like I mean, there are times when I'll be overwhelmed enough that I won't have any specific ideas about what to do, and I'll just be like, all right, what if I just waited?
mm.
which is a huge like the thing I used to do is what if I was on the internet more, which doesn't work very well. Like I've repeatedly noticed that being like on like being glued to a screen for a long time is very bad for my breathing. Like I breathe very shallowly.
Yeah,
Um,
that checks out.
it's like it's just like very stark like compared to like I've been trying to go for walks in the morning and I'll be like, oh, I'm
Mm,
breathing a little more easily now that I've gone for that walk. That's like nice. I like
mm.
feel better in my body. And just getting to like repeatedly notice the difference. Like this is how it feels when I go for a walk. And then this is how it feels when I spend like 3 hours on Twitter.
Yeah.
And just like, wow, yeah, Twitter's just really bad. It's
Yeah.
so much worse. It's just
What
terrible.
like what happens? Have you tried like breathing really intentionally while you're on Twitter? Like
I
what
have,
happens?
yeah, I've played around with stuff like that.
Does your way that you're relating to it change? Or do you just like leave? Like
It does help. I think yeah, I just sometimes I just leave. I'm just like become aware that I'm feeling bad.
yeah. Yeah.
Like I think often there'll be this thing that happens where I'm like scrolling through a bunch of tweets really quickly, and some of them are triggering, but I scroll through like several of them. So, and I don't give myself space to be with any of those reactions. So I'll
Mm,
like just scroll through a bunch of tweets, and then I'll be like slightly triggered by like six different things. And I didn't give myself space to feel any of those,
yeah.
so they all just kind of pile up.
It's the backlog.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
very, but also I think I'm kind of doing it on purpose. This is another full parts work kind of thing. Like,
Like to overwhelm yourself.
yeah, to like dissociate as a form of
Yeah.
dissociation. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a little sus. It's a little sus.
I love that.
Yeah,
I see you. This is suspicious.
yeah,
Yeah, I remember like being in a really sensitive state once and going on Twitter. I actually don't go on Twitter that much, like really. Um, and like I scrolled past this video of someone like dying. Like, it was actually
yeah,
crazy. Someone
yeah,
like was in a car crash. And it took me like an hour to recover. Like I was like, I had to go off Twitter. I had to like feel a lot of emotions.
yeah. It's
It's just
crazy.
like, oh my God, like we're feeling that all the time. Okay, we're not watching videos of people dying usually, but like we're getting that kind of input
Yeah,
all the time, just like tweet after tweet after tweet or like whatever,
and it's
and
all
we're never
different
processing it. Yeah.
in so many different directions. Like someone will be like, I just got married. Someone will be like, I lost my job. Someone will be like,
Yeah.
I have COVID. So
Yeah. And
my
you're like,
dad just died. And it's like
yeah.
all this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like actually if we took the time to process that, we would not have like we would be exhausted.
Mhm.
Like we would just run out of
Yeah,
resourcing because like
yeah,
yeah, like we're getting way more input than our resourcing
yeah.
allows. And so we just obviously block it.
Yeah, I think one thing is if I'm gonna be on Twitter, I ought to start reading tweets a lot more slowly. Like clicking
Mm,
on an individual tweet and then I'm just gonna like
yeah.
read this at a
Yeah.
conversational pace and maybe like if I know what the person's voice sounds like try to read it in my like with their voice at like the pace that they would actually say it and just try to like take it in.
That's
Okay.
cool. Yeah. I feel
It's
like I'd be
I
able to
don't
get like 3 tweets and then I'd
yeah,
be
I don't
done.
think I'd have the discipline to do this, but it would be more interesting. I also could just stop. I might just stop reading the timeline and just switch to lists and just have like a list of like 5 people and
Mm,
just
mm.
stick to that.
I didn't know that feature existed, but that sounds great.
Yeah, yeah, you can make
I'll
lists
try
and
that.
they're chronological and you can pin them to your timeline so that they're just like another tab after following
Cool.
and they have no ads. It's like pretty I think they have no ads. It's
Give
pretty
me
there's a lot to like about lists. They're just a little bit annoying to maintain. Like I usually just don't remember who's in the list. It's the problem.
I feel like I just like don't use Twitter enough for like this to make sense.
Yeah, I
But
mean that's fair. That's probably better.
yeah, yeah, I really tried. Like I really have tried. Like I've been like, this has been really good for people. Like I've seen the benefit. Like
Mm.
I should use Twitter more. And then I just like fail at it.
Yeah, it's really not. It's really not a thing I would like universally recommend. I think there's a
Yeah.
specific type of person who thrives on Twitter. Like there's like a specific way you have to learn how to write tweets uh,
Mm,
so that they actually kind of get traction. And like that, not everyone's going to want to do that. It's like kind of it's just a specific. It's specific. It's like you have to do a lot of cutting stuff down. Like I mean, if you're not writing long tweets, like you have to get things to fit in 280 characters and not everyone's going to want to do that. I personally found it like a really useful and interesting writing exercise to just be like, all right, how do I cut?
The
How
essence
do
of
I
it.
get to the how do I get to the core of
Yeah.
whatever this thing is that I'm trying
Yeah.
to say?
Yeah. Yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like unfortunately my like, or I don't know, maybe fortunately, my like laziness has not led in the direction of like that. Or like it's led in the direction of just like I like keep having these things and I'm like, oh, I could tweet about that. And then I'm like, yeah, later maybe. I'll like tweet about that later. And then like it's just like laziness wins and I never do.
Yeah, it's probably it's perhaps for the best.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Hmm. Cool.
Now we're just chilling.
Yeah.
Mm.
I like I'm like, I want to read these things. Like,
Yeah, I'll send you the links. They're good links.
yeah.
Oh, I am still curious to hear how the workshop went. We didn't
Oh
manage
yeah,
manage to
yeah.
talk about that.
We managed to write everything except that.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a problem. I've enjoyed both of
Yeah,
them. But
yeah,
I am still curious. Like, so you,
yeah,
yeah, what did you do? How did it go?
yeah. I think it was great. Like I guess like from from me the organizer or like wasn't a participant, so I'm not quite sure. But
Hmm.
yeah, we did the like actually a lot of IPF is grounded in meditation or like Dan Brown was like a big meditation
Hmm.
guy, like created IPF out of um like taking concepts that already existed and like making them like it was like originally like I think it was don't quote me on this. I think it was like ideal guru kind of vibe,
Yeah.
like ideal teacher. And then it was like the Western audience isn't gonna like that. And so like translating it into parents and not teacher.
Um,
Um so it's like really grounded in meditation.
hmm.
And so we did there's like a really interesting way that IPF does meta meditation, which is like
Hmm.
um, instead of just focusing on the feeling or like, you know, the like may be peaceful and then like focusing on whatever like feeling comes up, you focus on the like mind state of that. And it's like hard to describe, but it's like you're not like in the feeling so much as you're like in the mind state of it, but you're not in your head. I'm not sure if I'm doing justice to that, but like um so we started with that and we did
Hmm.
like you know walk through a bunch of like the foundations of the theory and then we're like actually metta is a really important part of giving your body resourcing. Like the thing that you're doing with IPF and with like many therapies is that you're like going into the scary and then coming back out to be soothed and then going into the scary and then coming back out. And
Hmm.
like when you do that process, you're like teaching your body that like it's okay to go into the scary because you can come back out.
Hmm.
And having access to something like meta like gives you like a pool of like positive emotion or like that you can like go into the scary and come back out and be like, oh cool, okay, positive or like
Hmm.
um
Hmm.
so that's like the foundation. And then um we did a like the visualization of ideal parents and like the 5 pillars that of like qualities of the parents.
Hmm.
um and yeah, I think people like found it. I mean, this was my experience when I first did the meditation was like um it was just like weirdly powerful. It was like a YouTube meditation. I was like, I don't know why I felt so much, but like I think people kind of had that experience of like, wow, I felt a lot of like grief or blockage or like
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
Um, and then we like I'm building a attachment repair AI tool.
Hmm.
And so then we shared that. Um,
Cool.
which yeah, has been like fun.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was good. It was good. And I want to like I actually really want to do a lot more. And I really want to play around with like I'm really interested in like really embodied workshops. So like how can you deliver basically no content or like very little content, but
Mm.
like all through experiences. So instead of being like, here are
Mm.
the 4 attachment styles, like get people to feel what it's like to be in each attachment style or feel what it's like
Mm.
to be in your attachment style.
Mm.
Um, and so I think there's like a lot of tasty room that I really want to play with around like
Mm.
taking all of the attachment repair IPF content and then basically like being like, okay, we're going to go through like a really embodied experience of like all these different pieces and like give as much as possible the experience of being soothed, of having the relief, so that people are like, oh wow, I could have that.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm. It reminds me of I've tweeted about this before, but the I went to this biomotive workshop and there
Oh
was
yeah.
some like theory, you know, like here's how we can, that was actually helpful to get the theory, but the main thing that was helpful was just being in a big room where a bunch of people were crying all
Yeah.
at once. It was just like this
Yep.
amazing sense of permission. Like there's
Yeah.
just there's this specific kind of like magic in the air there that I don't think I've seen anywhere else. Just from just having this like, oh yeah, everyone is crying. It's like this is a space where it's like completely fine. It's just totally okay. It's just not at all. Like
Yeah.
that kind of holding was like that was really cool to get to feel and like that particular kind of safety.
Mm, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think group fields are like insanely powerful. Like we really underrate them. But when you're in a group field that can like hold a lot of emotion, like yeah, yeah, exactly.
The
Yeah.
thing that you mentioned also about uh, oh like venturing out into something scary and then coming back to a
Mm,
place of safety. When I when I was taking the like the ideal parent figure course, like and just looking
mm,
just in the course content, there's this part where he talks about like the 5 pillars of secure attachment or something.
mm,
And the one that really surprised me that I really wasn't expecting, I think he called it something like delight in exploration. So I
mhm.
this and this kind
Yeah.
of like that was and that was very vivid to me. And I was like, oh, like you know your kid like wanders out to like explore the
Yeah.
world and you're like good job, that's amazing, you're doing so like it's so great that you're going out and exploring the world. And like there's something there. This also comes up in pre-conquest. There's like a lot of stuff. Sorry.
Mm,
This also comes up in pre-conquest consciousness.
yeah.
Talk about how the kids start learning how to do things like how they learn how to like you know chop food and like make baskets, like do sort of do the physical activities that keep life going. And they do it by just hanging out with the adults. They just like watch the adults do stuff. The adults are doing stuff. They're not particularly like teaching or taking care of the kids. They're
Mm,
just doing stuff, and the kids are just watching them. And then the kids start like touching all the
mm.
tools. Like they touch the knives and they touch the like baskets and whatever else. And then they start playing with them. They just start use there's no like they just start playing with like the same knives that the adults are using. And he said that the kids never cut themselves. Like there was never any like accidents. They were just learning how to use them properly, just from watching and then from touching. And he also says this really interesting thing about how when the kids were doing exploratory kind of activities, they knew to stop if they sensed that an adult around them was tense. Like they could set
Mm.
they like everything was kind of like they were all kind of like mutually attuned enough that if they sensed that an adult was feeling tense about something they were doing, that was already enough to get them to stop.
Oh,
And it
so good.
and so it wasn't necessary for the adults to be like, hey, don't do that. Like there was no
Yeah.
like none of that was necessary because they could just tell that an adult was looking at them and feeling tense and they're like, oh, this is not safe. I shouldn't do this. And that was how
Yeah.
they like learned how to do stuff. They were just like the adults were just like kind of chilling around them and they were just kind of chilling around the adults and they were just like exploring and then paying attention to how the adults felt about what they were doing.
Man, I'm
And
I'm
that
gonna
was
raise
all
my
it took.
kid with skin to skin contact, yo. Like it's decided. Like,
Um,
oh, that sounds so good.
it's wild. Yeah. I was just like there's something there in that whole chunk of stuff I just tried to talk about like what it could feel like to learn and explore from this baseline of
Mhm.
like total safety and attunement.
Yeah. Oh, that reminded me. I had this thought and then lost it. Like, um, Yeah, I think it's like one of the helpful frameworks that um or helpful for me when I heard was like there's you have your attachment system and then like I think it's called your exploration system.
Mm,
But these are two separate systems and like the attachment system is around the security and the safety and the like reaching out for your mom when you like need support or your caregiver. And then the exploration system is like go off and play and like
mm,
move away from the mother and like discover the world. And like different attachment styles have like the dismissive attachment style like has is like really good at exploration actually. Like
mm,
they're just
mm.
really out there exploring and they have no problem with it. But it's also like not quite true exploring because they don't have that safety. It's a sort of shut down or safety shut off. Like I don't need these things kind of exploration.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mhm.
And the like anxious attachment doesn't explore. Like they just are always so activated in the
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the like need for safety that like it's too scary to like go away and explore.
Mhm.
And the goal of like attachment repair work is to um provide sense of security in the attachment system so that you're like you reach out for the mom, you're always going to get that soothing so that you can go and explore. It's not just like for its own sake, it's like so that your exploration system can come online and you can like go out and like live in the world.
Yeah.
um yeah, and like actually this also like really stuck with me. Like you don't actually want to get the exploration from the people that you're getting the safety from necessarily. Or it's like you have to go out into the world and then come back and share with your tribe. Like,
Mhm.
here's what I found. Like, and then like go out again. Like everyone goes out and explores and then comes back and you find the safety together. And you're like don't actually want those to be the same thing.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
yeah.
mm, mm.
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot in terms of like, oh, I've like seemed like I'm exploring. It's looked like I'm exploring, but actually I'm not because I'm like way too scared and my attachment system is way too like out of whack. And so like never feel safe like actually moving away from like the metaphorical mother or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
It's just wait. So back in my rationalist days, at the
Yeah.
rationality workshops, we used to have one of our oldest classes was this class called comfort zone expansion. That was about
Mm.
exploration. Um,
Wow.
and the way we used to do it was really hardcore. It got a little easier and simpler over time. But like the way we used to do it was we would like go on a little field trip to the mall
Okay.
and we would be like, all right, guys, go find some scary things to do at the mall.
No way.
So we would like go around, and this was actually pretty fun. We would like go out and like
Yeah.
talk to cashiers or whatever. Or like, I think one
Mm.
time I tried like playing some music in the middle of the mall,
Well,
stuff like that. And then we would like gather back together afterwards to like tell stories about the stuff we did. So that was cool, but we decided it was like too extreme and too intense and kind of
mm.
focused too much on like, oh, here's this funny story instead of like here's what
Mm.
would actually be like a good exploration for someone. So we switched it to like we also changed the name to comfort zone exploration,
Mm.
to make it kind of more neutral as opposed
Mm.
to like, oh, you have to expand, you have to be comfortable
Yeah.
with more things. It's like, well, maybe you tried and you're like, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
Uh, and we switched it to it's still just at the workshop venue and people kind of pick sort of more personal things like, okay, maybe the thing you want to explore is like uh asking someone to explain something to you that you don't understand very well. Maybe that's difficult for you.
Mm.
And so you need to find someone else and you have to like, ask them if they can do a thing for you. And it's sort of more quiet, but maybe actually more valuable. But it's interesting that like so the kind of frame of the class itself was that the valuable thing was trying the new thing and just seeing how
Mm.
it was and being like maybe
Mm.
that was is what I was expecting. And it's not that that isn't valuable, but like from more of an attachment lens, it's like actually really important that we were all doing it together and we were all
Mm.
like coming together to do it and we were all like
Yeah.
gathering afterwards to
Yeah.
like debrief and kind of like reestablish
Yeah.
safety like that having having the rest of the workshop to fall back on as a source of safety maybe was actually the one of the primary ingredients. And it was one that we weren't like explicitly acknowledging, which is just
Yeah.
it's interesting to think about looking back.
Yeah, actually, as you were saying that, I was thinking like it seems like one of the core things here is that you have to have the safety, or like actually if you do the exploration you don't have the safety, it's like really damaging, or it could be really damaging.
Could be really damaging.
I like actually run into something where you're not comfortable and you don't have any soothing available or like any support available. And so like when you do stuff like that, it's like the way to make that go well is to have a bunch of support and resourcing available so that if something's uncomfortable, you can come back and be like, oh, like
Oh,
help, please. Like, yeah,
yeah.
like that was hard. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be nice. That sounds nice.
Yeah.
Sounds
Yeah. Yeah.
mm,
Yeah, we all need that, man. Like,
mm.
I'm not meant to do it alone.
That's sinking for me. I keep noticing it keeps being true in different ways, and I'm like, oh, I've been trying to do too much stuff. I'm like,
Yeah.
yep, that's still happening.
Yep.
Oh, so
Mm. What does that feel like? Like, what is the feeling of it sinking in?
there's like a sad, heavy, tired, so like, oh, like suddenly coming into contact with a part of me. It's like, oh, I've been like carrying this heavy burden for such a long time, and maybe I didn't have to do that. Or maybe I did have to do it. I don't know. It's unclear. But being coming into contact with that,
Mm.
feeling away.
But maybe it doesn't want to, regardless of whether it had to or not.
Mm. We've been talking about some heavy stuff. It's good. It's good.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed this conversation. It's just like, yeah, oh, there's a lot of stuff here.
Yeah. Like, hard to talk about emotional work without some emotions.
Got some
Like,
emotions, yeah.
yeah.
Oh, terrible. Of course.
Work is the thing is the work, whatever it is. Yeah.
I could keep trying to like build more connections between things, but this actually feels like a decent place to stop. We're at the
Yeah.
hour and a half mark. That's like pretty good.
Yeah.
How is there more stuff you really want to get out there before we close? Or,
I feel pretty complete. Yeah.
cool. Cool.
This is a beautiful journey.
Yeah, we really went to some places.
Yeah, I feel like I got into like kind of a flow state and I was like not really sure what was happening, but we were just like
Vibing,
somewhere.
just vibing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Minda. Appreciate it. It's been fun. And hopefully I'll get this up soon.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for holding the container and vibing.
Very welcome. And how do I have to find the button again?